CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris is in Washington. So, Steve, let's talk about Ted Cruz. Why would the senator even come to New York if he's so far behind in the polls?
Well, it's not about winning New York for him. There are 95 delegates at stake, and the way that New York allocates their delegates, it's about there's about 14 that are allocated statewide, and the rest are allocated via congressional districts. And within those congressional districts, as long as you don't get 50% of the vote or higher, then the delegates are allocated, they're broken up. So his goal, basically, and Kasich's goal, is to keep Trump under 50% in as many of these congressional districts as they can, and therefore peeling off some delegates away from Trump. They don't want Trump to walk away with all 95 delegates out of New York. If he does, that that helps him get closer to 1237, the number to clinch the nomination. So it's really all about delegate math at this point. I don't think Cruz has any inkling or thoughts that he could even come close to winning in New York. But if he can just keep Trump below 50% in a lot of these places in New York, then we're talking fewer delegates for Trump.
But as Josh noted, Kasich does a better job in a national matchup against Clinton. So is Cruz really the best bet for Republicans?
I mean, that's a good question. Part of it is these general election matchup questions that are asked of voters in April and this early on are not necessarily something you can sort of bank on in November. And so, while Kasich doesn't have a lot to sort of hang on in terms of positive spin in terms of why he's still in the race, he is hanging on that general election matchup. And I think there are some people that think that because Kasich has spoken in a more moderate tone, middle-of-the-road tone, that would be helpful to him in a general election against a Democratic nominee. But at the end of the day, Cruz is the one that's closest in terms of delegates to Trump. Cruz is the one that's been winning more states. And when it comes down to it, it's the delegates on the floor of the convention in July at the Republican convention that are going to select their nominee. And there will be more delegates on the floor that are predisposed to select Cruz than there would be to Kasich. So I don't know if just going in and making the argument that a few polls show me more electable in November against Hillary Clinton is the real answer to getting nominated in an open convention situation.
Trump is obviously going to do well in New York, but looking ahead, he has a 69% unfavorability rating among voters overall. So I guess the question is, Steve, when you look at past performances by candidates who have those kind of high unfavorables, how difficult is it or easy is it for them to try to turn those numbers around?
Well, let's just put it this way. 69% unfavorable for a presidential nominee is unprecedented, at least in modern times. And frankly, Hillary Clinton, who has unfavorable ratings above 50%, that's unprecedented too. Usually these folks are not nearly as unliked as they are in this case. And so while I would say normally if it was just in a bubble, just Trump becoming the nominee at 69% unfavorable, then you'd make the argument that that's almost too much to overcome in November. But he's going to be going up against somebody, if Clinton is the nominee, who is also very unpopular nationwide. And it's going to be really interesting to see how voters react to that. Will there be a situation where voters will just be so sick of the two of these folks that they don't show up in November? Or is it a situation where people will be so rallied on each side to vote the other person or vote against the other person that that turnout is higher than normal? It's just going to be really fascinating to see, and it's also going to be fascinating to see how ugly this thing gets if you've got these two who are so looked at unfavorably on both sides if they are going up against each other in November.